Hey everyone, welcome back to the NPTE podcast. This is Will Crane, your host. Thank you so much for joining me as we go through the content you need in order to dominate on test day. So thank you so much for joining. As always, today we have a practice question related to the lymphatic system. I want to be sure to go over that. But just a quick reminder as we do, we are starting up our VIP program as we head into the July cohort series. So those of you who are familiar, you've heard me say this before, but the VIP program, this is our flagship program. This is the one that gets you through all the systems on the NPTE. It gives you a very small group, high touch feel so that you can be sure to not only get your questions answered, but be able to go through the content in a systematic and organized way. So it's a great way to stay on top of the content, great way to stay motivated as you study. And I think you'll find that that small group feel is so helpful because it number one, helps you feel like you can reach out with questions you may have. You're able to reach out to me personally, schedule calls. We give you not only the tips and tricks about how to study, but also we give you the content contained in each system. It really is a very robust system. This comes with our 6 full practice exams, comes with our quiz builder, comes with all of our written material, including our workbook, study guide, workbook key. I mean, really, it's a one-stop shop for everything you need for the NPTE. Now, it's something that we do start about 10 weeks before every test day. So we will be starting that up again here for the July cohort here in just a week or so. But again, those of you listening down the road to this, be sure to check out ptfinalexam.com where you can find our latest dates and course offerings so you can participate and take advantage of all the content we have for you. Plus, if you're looking for PTA content, we additionally have PTA courses for both the full program, the PTA premium class, as well as our PTA crash courses. We've got everything PTA related as well. So be sure to check out ptfinalexam.com. You can reach out to us. And if you do have a group of 5 or more, we can get you a sweet discount. So please reach out to us over there, ptfinalexam.com/contact, and we can help you out. All right, so today we're talking lymphatic system. So as you recall on the exam, there are somewhere between 3 and 8 questions related to the lymphatic system. So certainly not a large system on the exam. It's on certainly in the other systems category. Just of note, you've heard me say this before on the podcast too, but the lymphatic system used to be a part of the cardiovascular and pulmonary system grouping. And a couple of years ago, they decided to pull out lymphatic system and give it its own designated set of questions. And so therefore, you get to reap the benefit of that, 3 to 8 questions related to the lymphatic system. Now, granted, there's probably only so many ways they can ask these questions. And in fact, as I was writing this question today, I thought, man, haven't I written this question like 50 times in different ways or forms? But that's the nice part about going through practice questions is it shows you all of the ways it could be asked so that on test day, you won't be surprised by the content. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and go through our practice question here. We'll talk through the question, give you a moment to respond, and then we'll talk about it. During examination, a patient is noted to have unilateral lower extremity swelling. The patient reports that the edema persists despite attempts to reduce the edema via elevation. The patient's history does not indicate any vascular impairments. When attempting to lift the dorsal skin folds of the toes, the clinician is able to lift and fold the skin. Which of the following best describes the results of this patient's examination? All right, so again, during examination, the patient is noted to have unilateral lower extremity swelling. The patient reports the edema persists despite attempts to reduce the edema via elevation. The patient's history does not indicate any vascular impairments. When attempting to lift the dorsal skin folds of the toes, the patient is able to lift and fold the skin. Which of the following best describes the results of this patient's examination? 1, a stage 0 lymphedema, positive stemmer sign. 2, stage 1 lymphedema, positive stemmer sign. 3, stage 2 lymphedema, negative stemmer sign. And option 4, stage 3 lymphedema, negative stemmer sign. So it's a mix and match question. Stage 0 lymphedema, positive stemmer sign. Stage 1 lymphedema, positive stemmer sign. Stage 2 lymphedema, negative stemmer sign. Stage 3 lymphedema, negative stemmer sign. All right, so looking at this question, there are a couple of things you've got to note. Number one, we see that there is no history of vascular impairment and the unilateral lower extremity swelling that does not reduce with elevation. This is a key, at least feather in your cap to indicate that it is lymphedema. When there's no other cause and you have unilateral swelling, you start to think that it is lymphedema. And in fact, lymphedema is a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning you have to rule out the presence of acute injury. You have to rule out the presence of deep vein thrombosis. So a couple of things like that you have to rule out. But in the absence of all of that, you are left then with lymphedema. Okay, so now we see that this patient they've attempted to reduce the edema via elevation, but have been unsuccessful to do so. So when you consider the staging of lymphedema, you have to consider that irreversible or spontaneously irreversible lymphedema, that's categorized as a stage 2 on the lymphedema scale. We'll talk about lymphedema scale here in just a moment as well. But a stage 2 lymphedema is indicated by non-pitting edema that is spontaneously irreversible with elevation. So it just means that if you elevate the leg, it doesn't really help that much, and it's not really pitting. It could be possibly pitting a little bit, but usually we consider stage 2 to be non-pitting. Now, the second part of this question is asking you to assess the result of the Stemmer-Sign test. And so in this case, the question says, when attempting to lift the dorsal skin folds of the toes, the clinician is able to lift and fold the skin. So that is indicating a negative Stemmer sign. So remember, a Stemmer sign is where you try to lift and grasp the dorsum of usually the second toe. You try to grasp the skin, lift it and fold it, or pinch it between your fingers. If the skin is too full so that you can't fold it, that tells you that there's a lot of fullness there and is likely to indicate lymphedema. However, a Stemmer sign, a negative Stemmer sign where you are able to lift and fold the skin, does not indicate the absence of lymphedema. So I guess another way to look at this is Stemmer sign positive, it is a strong indicator of lymphedema. Stemmer sign negative is kind of a meh. It doesn't really tell you a whole lot of information other than they have a negative Stemmer sign. So a positive Stemmer sign tells you that they likely have lymphedema. A negative Stemmer sign really doesn't tell you that much. And so in this case, we see that they have lymphedema. There's no other explanation for it, unilateral lower extremity swelling. Plus, they have a negative Stemmer sign where the clinician is able to lift and fold the skin, therefore leaving us with option 3, which was stage 2 lymphedema, negative Stemmer sign. Now back to the scaling on lymphedema. So the staging system for lymphedema, you've got stage 0, 1, 2, and 3. So there's 4 stages, 0, 1, 2, 3. 0 subclinical, 1 is pitting edema, 2 is irreversible or spontaneously irreversible edema, and stage 3 is trunk-like, or it would be described as being extremely, thickened skin, hyperpigmentation, warty overgrowths, lymphorrhea. There's lots of things going wrong in a patient who has a stage 3 lymphedema. So that's where the acronym SPIT comes in, S-P-I-T. S is for the first stage, stage 0. That indicates subclinical. So subclinical, stage 1 is the P, so that's the pitting edema. Stage 2 is the irreversible, or another way to think of it is spontaneously irreversible edema. And then stage 3, the last stage or the worst stage, is trunk-like. So subclinical, pitting, irreversible, and trunk-like are the SPITs of lymphedema. So that's how I remember it. And that's I know it's a very silly way to remember it, but sometimes those are the things that tend to stick a little bit better for test day. And that's something like when I go on campus and help students for a day, it's a lot of fun. And we get to go through like a million of these acronyms and mnemonic devices and ways to remember things. And that's what we do as a part of the VIP class too, is not only do we talk the content, but we also talk about how to remember it. And so this would be an example of that. SPIT, subclinical, pitting, irreversible, and trunk-like. And those are your stages. And then this question is describing Stemmer sign. All right, so with that, we'll bring it to a conclusion. As always, thank you so much for spending the time with me going through a practice question. Please be sure to check out all the other podcast episodes we have available. And if you haven't already, please just take a moment and leave us a review. It really helps as we try to spread the word. So in the meantime, stay safe out there. Happy studying. Will Crane fist pumps all around, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks.